Hey everybody, it is Cinnamon Cooney, your art Sherpa, and I'm going to show you for real, step by step, how to paint this incredible wildflower scene. I have every kind of daisy and lupine and foxglove and phlox, all these amazing different wildflowers, all in this one scene. And it looks so busy, but it's actually pretty simple when you break down the steps. I'm going to explain those steps. To help me do that is my husband John.
Hello.
He is the disembodied voice that you'll be hearing during the show, and he will make sure that the cameras are pointing at what I'm demonstrating. On top of that, this is part of Acrylic April, which is a 30-day painting challenge. So if you like flowers, come paint all of them. We're painting them every day, and you can really do it any time of year, whenever you find this. For that, there are mini books, which are written out instructions that match the video. On a big one like this, I highly recommend it because if you get lost in a step, you take your mini book, you look at the timestamp, you look at the chapter, and you know where you are. And you've got that two-layer learning system to help you. So if my verbal explanation is somehow, I don't know, unintuitive for how you learn, you can be like, oh, this woman, and then look it right up in the mini book. It will be written a different way. And it's okay because we learn differently and we are not the same. And there are lots of different ways of learning. And by the way, they're all valid.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So on that note, get your paint, get your brushes, come back because I really am going to show you how to paint this gorgeous painting. Come on, let's go. On today's 8x8 canvas, I have the wish or intention that wherever you are in your life, that you have abundance in all of the good things that you enjoy. I also want to let you know where everything is on the palette. Even though we list the colors, I just want you to know where it's placed. This is Cad Yellow and Mars Black. I put these here for a background. Mars Black, Cad Red Medium, Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Green, Burnt Sienna, Ultramarine Blue, Quinacridone Magenta, Phthalo Blue, and here's the Titanium White. I'm going to take a 3/4 inch Princeton brush. This is in the Catalyst line of brushes. And I'm going to mix my yellow and black together, making that weird deep green that they make.
Deep green.
Yeah, and I like this for this type of floral, which we haven't really done on the channel before. Um,
Oh,
I think,
sorry about that. My camera ran away on me.
I like bringing new stuff to you guys. Sometimes I like bringing things that I enjoy, of course. You've probably noticed that this acrylic April, like my my goodies, the things that give me great pleasure. But sometimes I like to just bring something new or unexpected to you guys. This should be a new or unexpected. Yellow and black make green.
That's unexpected. I was gonna not expect that. What does that mean?
Well, it means that and most of the yellows with Mars Black will make a green, and that's because the black is a bit of a blue.
Huh.
Pigment being different than light. So, in some color theory, we have the exact same stuff going on, but in some, it's a little bit different because pigment is not light. I'm just going to paint around here, make sure it's all covered. Now, this is weird. I am going to come through and just make sure that it's a little bit streaking down instead of every which direction, which I don't normally do in a background painting, if you painted with me for a minute. But the reason that I'm doing this is this wildflower floral, right? So we've got a kind of wildflower floral is coming down in vertical steps. So everything I'm going to be doing about this is going to try to inform that reality and space that depth. So that's why I'm going to the trouble of kind of even giving the background of vertical streaking. Not streaking like in the 80s, but streaking on your canvas. I don't know why I went there. I'm so weird. Okay. Take a deep breath. Thoroughly dry your canvas. Come back and I'm going to show you what the next step is. So we have some interesting depth and color that comes along here. And I'm going to continue on with my 3/4 inch angle. I'm going to grab a little bit of my burnt sienna and my phthalo green. And I'm going to come up in this upper corner and glaze over my yellow and black. Notice how that is?
Yeah.
Doesn't it look like vibrantly green? It's so funny how.
It's all sheeny if you look at it from the side, but from the top you can see the color because it's still wet and reflective on the side view.
I'm just doing this in the upper, like really upper third, almost upper half, right? And while it's still a little bit wet, I'm going to come in and grab some of my yellow and mix it into my phthalo green and burnt sienna. Still on my 3/4 brush. And I'm going to make some little lines. All right. These are sort of deep. Oh, I don't want any bright yellow on there. Because I need a brighter green that's going to come up from this. And so what I'm doing is creating a depth or texture. Over here, you'll notice that I'm doing stronger brush strokes. Sometimes I'll come in with like a green, more green into it. This is what's going on in the deep flora. There is no fauna here. I mean, there could be, but we're not seeing it. Kind of blend that there. I don't want it to have too hard of an edge.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm going ahead and kind of scumbling that out. Oh, that's dark. You could probably hardly see it, but that's what you need to do. And you can't do the next part until this is all dry. So let's dry it and we'll come back and do the next step. So in this kind of painting, we have a lot of green on green. We have a cacophony of flowers and textures. I'm going to begin with a number 4 round, and I'm going to start layering. My first layer, believe it or not, will be a little bit of my burnt sienna and my ultramarine blue, which makes quite a lovely gray. And I'm going to get some white into it. And you'll notice it's like an off white. It's not white, it's an off white. And I'm going to come here and make a little dab. And we're going to dab down some shapes.
Oh, yeah.
There'll be 2 little brush strokes. It goes brush stroke, a little curve, and like a meeting one. Sometimes they'll need to be bigger. Sometimes they will need to be smaller. Let's do it again. Okay. So curve and then curve. I'm going to put one in the center here. Sometimes I will really center one up. And you'll notice that was a brush stroke down and one across. When I have like snapdragons or hollyhock or lupines, stock flowers kind of have similar structures, and how you differentiate them is sort of the little curve you do on the brush stroke.
Ah.
We're going to just make sure that these are placed well. Another thing to think about on spike flowers is they're bigger on the base and they become smaller as you paint up. So down and kind of a little stroke. You're like, I'm not painting flowers. Ah, but you are.
The essence of flowers.
Now, we can only paint the essence of flowers. We will never, ever duplicate nature in all of its glory. But we can enjoy the heck out of it and just all the attempts to try to do it. I like to put little bits of, and I might even make it a little grayer, like hidden in the greenery. See, I'm painting that sort of in the greenery. That's a good thing to do. I'm also going to want to come in, and this will be sort of strange. I'm going to take some yellow and let the green be in it, but I really want it to be a little yellow. I might get some white in there. And this is going to be one of those things that's going to be down to your paint. If your paint's yellow, can't cover dark color for anything, you will have to paint these strokes in white first, dry it, and then come over the yellow. Now I'm kind of doing a little scritchy.
Yeah.
Yes, the danger of using unusual colloquialisms again, but it's like a little up and down scratching stroke. These sort of represent some flowers that are perhaps also in a stalk, but they're more of a bell. They're open. We will probably find them very much in the centers. Like to hide some blooms here and there. That looks pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't want to overwhelm you with too much. I will go ahead and get my liner. This is the Catalyst number 4 liner. You could use a number 1 script liner, and I'm going to take a little bit of this yellow and red, but it's okay that some green got in it to gray it. Coming in and adding in the center of these flowers, these little focals. Rinse it out fairly well. I'm going to get some yellow. I might even gray it with a bit of ultramarine blue. I want it to be yellow, but I just don't want it to be as bright as cad yellow tends to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But not unbright. It's definitely a dance, and you can see it's not even the bright green that we were using for the bright yellow green that we were using for the flowers here. And in the snapdragons, I want to kind of put a little yellow center that could be there. They can have yellow or purple. There's generally like a little bit of color. They're not like a daisy center. They're just in the flower pocket is color. I'm going to get a little bit of white on my brush and make a lighter gray. Not pure white, but definitely lighter gray. Come down, do 2 strokes, and kind of exaggerate that base on there. Look at us go. See how that gives some structure?
Oh, yeah.
We can kind of see what it is.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little extra yellow into my yellow green with some white. In flower paintings like this, there are zones, layers,
Flower zones.
flower zones. And how you get these in is you build the different zones. You acknowledge that there are zones. And you just go, all right, I got to fill in all these zones. I accept this reality.
The flower zones.
Well, because when you do,
imagine a place where flowers existed in your imagination. You have now entered the flower zone.
You've entered something. So I've taken my yellow and my phthalo green and I'm making kind of a very light white green. I'm making a downward stroke. This is the spikes unbloomed. And it definitely is coming in, on some greens and things. I'm going to take my yellow over to my phthalo green. I can tone it with a little burnt sienna. Make some leaves that are like little fingers coming out. Kind of tucking them in here and there. Little downward stems for some of these.
Yeah.
Little white in there. Green on green on green.
So much green.
Textures.
Layers.
Yeah. It's a journey. And also come here and I'm using my monogram a lot.
Oh.
Probably more than we have in many, many paintings, yeah.
Yeah.
Add highlights to some of the grass. On top of the little fingers. Look at you go. Look what you've done.
Wow.
The upper left corner. We're going to be here for a minute. Take a deep breath. Pace yourself. It's a very meditative practice. And the reason that we do this is because what's visually beautiful about this is how full it is. But you have to understand how those layers build up in this type of floral. And by doing this with me, you're going to be much more familiar with that. When we come back, I'm going to show you what the next step is in this gorgeous garden cacophony of wildflowers. All right, now we're going to add in some lots of interesting other different little visitors to the garden. I'm going to go ahead and get my yellow over kind of closer to my red. It's not an orange, but it's a slightly more orange yellow. I'm using my number 4 round and I'm loading very delicately at the tip. I'm going to just kind of touch down a little shape of a daisy.
Huh.
Little pullbacks. The kind of profile of the daisy is often about which way it's facing. If it's facing you or facing away, and where the bowl is on the daisy, and where we eventually end up putting the face.
Ah.
It's important to distribute them kind of in irregular places throughout. I think it's also nice to put little dots that kind of imply unbloomed versions of them
Oh. Yeah.
here and there.
Imply.
Yeah, they're in growth, right? And already this is becoming quite a little wild. Loading on the tip. It's making the little brush strokes. They can come off, and I recommend that they do, just so that your canvas feels full.
Mm.
I have a screen that you guys all love that you've asked me for years to do a painting from. It's from a very famous Clint painting. Um, this is very much like that. And I feel like I don't do enough of this. And I should do more. I should do it on big canvases.
Yeah.
Ooh, we'd be at it for a minute, wouldn't we? For us. Working all that stuff out. Okay, that's a very nice little run of those. And we'll let this have a dry. Rinse out your brush. And let's... I think I'm going to go into the blue. I'm going to start with a little bit of ultramarine and a smidge of quinacridone. It's going to make it quite dark, almost like a indigo.
Hmm.
And come here. And it's gonna look dark initially. We're gonna have to really pull out the blue by our highlights. Do you guys remember the shape? 2 down strokes, 1 across?
Yeah.
So that's the shape of the little flowers in the stalk. And they're around. They're radial, so you've got some at the sides and some forward facing. And the stalk does what? It gets thicker as it goes down, right?
Yeah.
What's nice about this blue is that when we come back and we want to hide the blue in the deep green, we can do that really well. Which we will want to at some point. Be like, oh no, you're in the deep, deep foliage. We're kind of centered here. Maybe a little more than I would always like, but we're definitely a little centered here. A little more blue over here. I'm going to stay in this deep blue for a few of these. Let's do one right here. Two down, 1 across. I think this is going to be kind of like the cowgirl one that you several people just love. It's fine. It's not going to be as hard as maybe the cowgirl because the horse was hard, right? You had to have kind of like a feeling of horse.
Yeah.
But on this, it's just going to be one of those ones I think you guys like the cowgirl when you get it done are going to feel super proud of.
It's really neat.
I'm just going to make sure that I've got this blue distributed a few places because I know that's going to matter. And then I'm going to come here and put a little white on this. And you can kind of see the little hint of purple almost to it. I'm not going to do this whole stalk because I've got to finish it up top with a smaller brush, but I'll start it with my number 4. And I'll come back and finish it with my monogram. This is really part of the same plant, but it's going to be lighter overall because sometimes when they're younger or more tender, they are lighter.
Oh.
So, we'll begin that there. And then this is not the lightest color in our flowers. And I'm kind of getting that top petal, which sometimes can have a little light moment in it. So now we've got that contrast. Very important contrast starting to happen. We can capture a little light on here. Looking pretty good. I'm going to switch over momentarily for my number 1 monogram liner. I'm going to go ahead and get some white. It's not number 1, it's a number 4 monogram liner on this line. Other lines, it could be a different thing entirely. We're going to go ahead and load up a pretty bright phthalo blue. I will be coming up that with green and other colors. It's just that's what we're going to be using right now. I mix the phthalo blue into this for that upper part of the petal.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go into the really blue and white. We're really trying to capture those there. So now these are stalks, and I have these like little blue highlights on them, so it's going to take them more into the blue space. Coming here and kind of layering over. Painting little details on this flower coming down. And hopefully it just starts to create its little texture. And I get to do this all around.
Yeah.
Hide something there, that little bit of blue there. Just using the #1 monogram liner. My strokes are curves. I'm staying in touch with the each individual little flower. Some flowers are made up of one flower, like over here.
Yep.
And some flowers are made up of a whole bunch of flowers. That's what we're playing with, right?
Yeah.
What they're made up of. Now, I might not put these ones in the dark grass with too much more highlights, like that one might have a little. But it might be just a hint so that when we fill in with the greenery, it's like, oh, did you see those little flowers sticking out there? Wow, they were so awesome and special.
They are.
They are, actually. It's a pretty fun thing to do. Now I'm going to come in and get a little more of my yellow. And it's okay if it goes into my red. I want it to still be closer to the yellow, just a hint of the color we mixed before. I'm going to come over with my monogram liner. And make sure my flowers over here have some highlights too. Maybe even some bright yellow. Because they are also a very bright little series of flowers.
Oh.
We don't want to lose that, do we? No. I'm going to take a little of my magenta and red together. And depending on where I put that in the center of the flowers, it'll sort of change the way the face is. Aren't they lovely?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're still on this row, but this was a lot to do, so I'm probably going to call this a step so you don't get overwhelmed by the visual busyness of all of this.
Hmm.
Let's call a step, take a breath, evaluate our paintings. I'll come back and show you how to fill this in even more. as we continue to fill in this back layer, I'm going to take a little bit of my red, my Cad Red, and my Quin Magenta together. And I'm going to make kind of a mid-range between these two. I'm going to load on the toe again. And we're going to make a flower that comes at a diagonal here in the right-hand corner. And it's going to have little teardrop petals that come down. Also again in a stalk, but not in the same way as, say, some of its little friends here. Oh, I just took away one of the little blues I put in. And that'll happen to me sometimes. When I'm going, I'll take away something and I got to put it back for balance. That's its little stalk. And then we're going to have another little one kind of coming over here. Just two little curved pull down strokes. I'm going to tuck some blue back here where I lost my blue.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I lost it and I want it back. And that'll happen. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I lost my blue, but I want it back. That's how you get it back. That's how we go. Now, as this is drying, I'm going to go ahead and take my green and a little burnt sienna and some cad yellow. I'm going to paint kind of a leaf a little more upward. I do want it to kind of come to a point. These are thicker, kind of thicker leaves.
Yeah.
That do happen from time to time in and around tall plants, right? Just the burnt sienna. I'm just pulling these up. There's always a little curve to them. And that's just because wild things tend to grow unruly, in my opinion. I've added a little more yellow to the mix, and that's going to let me highlight some of these. Might come back with some phthalo green. I'm going to kind of blend some of this in using just the pure phthalo, which is still vibrant against this background.
Yeah. It's very vibrant.
But it's a deep value. I'm going to rinse out thoroughly. And then I'm going to add some white to the red and magenta mix. Kind of give some highlights to these petals. Pops them a little bit, right? And then in to our monogram liner. And I'm going to come here between my yellow and my black, right? And make a very, very light green with the yellow and black. See how light that green is?
Mm.
Maybe add a little white to it. Do some fine lines down from these, right in their little stems. I can go darker yellow and black if I want one of their little petals to be more in the shadow, and then add more yellow to it when I want it to be more in the light. All through these yellow flowers right here on the left-hand side. I don't, just really kind of working that in. White and yellow to lighten even more. And I'm adding some of these little lines back here.
That really makes them look dimensional.
We're just making it, that's exactly all we're doing, is we're just adding some dimensionality. Maybe come through that pink flower, adding some leaves and a stem.
Yeah.
Gives it a little anchoring.
It's very pretty.
You
Little
know,
field of flowers.
you can feel the flowers. And the nice thing about painting flowers is that even if you kind of sometimes maybe feel a little tired in your painting, this will let you stay more energized because just the subject matter feels good. All right. And I think one last little touch, I'm going to take some white into my pink here. I might even add a little yellow to it. Just a lighter. Add a little touch to those flowers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to call that a step. We did a lot there. And when we come back, we're going to fill in another row of flowers, but dry this thoroughly. So I'm going to put another little grouping of phlox here. I'm going to get some of my white into my blue and burnt sienna, which kind of grays it, if you guys remember.
I remember.
Do you remember? It was minutes ago.
You talked about it.
I've talked about it a little. I have cleaned my water. I'm using my number 4 round. And I do want a white, but I don't want it to be a bright white because I really need to reserve that for highlights. Now this flower is again many flowers attached together into kind of clumps. So my trick will be, I'm going to add some darker little clumps here, capturing that kind of shape and personality. And these will have lots and lots of foliage over them. So it's a place to kind of explore and have some fun and be like, how would I do this? And know that you've got other foliage that's going to be coming up over it. Kind of a little bit like the hydrangea. And that it's a little bit clumping. And so we're making those little irregular shapes. Notice the little rounded kind of wandering edges of that. I'm going to come and add a little more white to my mixture. Not pure white, but definitely a little more white. Kind of give some value differentials.
Ah, very pretty.
Just, it is though. It's just a little bit pretty. And even though they're clumped together, you want to make sure it looks like little petals are escaping the clump.
Yes.
I'm lighting the tops of them to show a little sunlight in them. And I might even get a little bit of my Quin and ultramarine blue together and kind of makes a little bit of a purple to come back and maybe give these shadows just a little more oomph. Even though these flowers are white. That looks pretty good. I'm going to come back into my #1 monogram liner and I'm going to get some of my phthalo green and cad yellow. And I think about these little stalks. Maybe a little more yellow. Getting into a little more yellow. And you just pull down into a little comma. And again, these will be covered. So you're not going to do anything but fill in the space that you have.
Right.
Just put a little yellow, a little highlighting at the top. Add a little white to the mix to lighten it. So we sort of filled that in, didn't we? So we're going to dry that and we're going to continue across. Now I've got another kind of big star of a spike flower here. And I've got some little almost blooming and leaves. Then there's going to be this daisy kind of cluster right here. So I've really got to fill this in to get the next layer across. I have done these here in kind of the blue. And what I'm going to do to sort of create a variance is I'm going to take my Quin Magenta and my ultramarine blue and a little white, and we're going to make a distinctive purple. Right, that's what's going to be new and unusual, and I'm going to kind of center between these two. And again, kind of do the two little brush strokes down where we create the little pocket flower. You'll notice that the flowers all kind of face up. And so that's, the first kind of way we get into our little pocket. I'm going to add a little white to my brush. kind of accentuate the forward faces of those little flowers. And it's fun to have something in purple. You know, we have so many colors. You want to kind of get your whole rainbow going in your garden. I'm going to switch from my number 4 Simply Simmons to my number 4 monogram liner, like my Catalyst liner. And I'm going to begin by getting some of my yellow into a green with a little burnt sienna, very light. And even with a little bit of white here at the top and a little more yellow. All on the tip. And let's tuck in somebody that's blooming here. About to. This is a like coming into its own sort of spike. And I'll come into my purple.
It's a little spike.
Right, with my green still on the brush. It creates a little hint at that. Do another one. We've got a few of these to do. They fill up nicely because I think it's nice to show things that are not bloomed. I'm going to grab my light one now, kind of work it in. My light green. And I like getting into the purple as we come down. And the yellow and the green sort of neutralize the purple and give it that not having bloomed yet little feel, which is pretty awesome, I think. The darker green as I come down. And then into a little bit of purple. You know, sometimes there's different sizes of these. Sometimes they're just starting. I'm going to mist my paint. I'm going to take this and kind of make sure we have little stems coming down. I'm going to go into some darker green. And again, start to talk about the little, these more structural leaves. They're kind of like little 5-fingered leaves. We don't have to paint them like perfect, but we do want to show that they're here because their shape is pretty distinctive to the plant that we're painting.
Yeah. Many, many layers of flowers.
Many, many layers of flowers. Just pulling that in. And see how it just kind of builds and builds and the garden starts to get some depth going. And oh my, I love the depth in that garden. I've added some more yellow to my green. And while this is all having a little moment, I'm going to go ahead and get a little white over to my pink. Maybe put a little purple into it. And kind of add a highlight here. Imagine if you did a floral like this on a really big canvas. Besides the fact of imagining how long that would take. But I think what you'd have is a really stunning, stunning piece that just constantly made your home feel like the garden, that we all wish we had. All right. We're doing so great. You're
You
doing
are.
so great. You're doing great, John.
You're
I'm
doing
doing great. They're doing great at home. Take a deep breath. Let's dry this. I bet you're just like, oh no, another layer. Yes, another layer. More flowers, please. So I love that, when I promised to teach you how to paint flowers, I didn't like shy away from the stuff that I was like, oh, that's going to be big. Because, if you want to know how to paint flowers, you want to know how to paint flowers.
right.
You know, I have pulled out a little more white here and I'm going to get into my yellow green a bit, even more yellow, right? Just sort of like it's a very yellowed green. Just try to work my white into it. And I'm thinking, actually, as we come forward, I may use a secret weapon, my fluid acrylic, titanium white. You can keep thinning your white paint, but this is sort of already flowing and highly pigmented, and I think it will help me make these easier. I could be wrong, but we're about to find out. So let's put one here. We've done these kind of a little bit, haven't we? In the teapot. If you're doing the 30-day painting, you might have done these with me. If you didn't, you might be like, no, I've never seen this flower before. What are you talking about? Just kind of pulling that out there. Just trying to make sure that, these are in nature, things tend to be, sometimes a little untidy. And you want to make, if you can, kind of capture that feeling and stuff. It's never a really bad thing. And come here and maybe make a small one. Kind of doing these more yellow ones a few places. And I may have to come back and put in centers and add a second layer of flowers to, change the directionality of some. These, though, are kind of newly bloomed and facing different directions.
I like little
I'm gonna
field of
hide.
flowers.
I'm gonna hide some of these kind of in the bushes, which is why I'm being very sketchy with them, because maybe they would just be in the bushes, and they wouldn't necessarily be just right out there. All right, I'm gonna continue on with maybe a little more white. Got a little bit of the yellow green in it, but perhaps it's a little more white. That one's a little more focal. Capturing some short and long lengths of petals. Does it help? Yes, it
Yeah.
does. I like to also pull some off, who are like, I'm going off into the edges here.
Yeah.
That's a nice feeling. Now, I'm going to dry this and come back and do the next stage of this. So dry these thoroughly and meet me back and I'll show you how to finish the flowers. So I want to put some centers in here. I've got a little orange already kind of going over my green and yellow. So I can kind of work it in to gray it. And what I mean by that is to desaturate this yellow green. All right. We're going to come in here and we're going to add some little button centers to some of these.
Those look so pretty.
This one is maybe going to be a longer, thinner oval. Definitely going to put this oval facing back that way. And I want to make sure that any of the ones that I've kind of pushed off the page I can get somewhere. I'm also going to make sure that I continue to think about these little hidden ones. They're a little bit low. I'm going to rinse out. I'm going to come here with just my fluid white. While this is drying, I'm going to maybe get a little sunlight on some of these petals. Some went up, some went down. See, messy flower.
Yeah, they're cute little flowers.
And I've closed that one up a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Faced it that way. Just a little bit up, just a little bit down.
Yeah. These are the daisies.
These are the daisies in the garden. I know I'm a little quiet. I'm just thinking.
Thinking about the daisies.
Sometimes I'm thinking hard about these daisies.
These daisies in our life.
These daisies in our life, right? I have them there. Right. I'm going to come in and get a slightly brighter yellow green. Still in that same family, but just brighter. Kind of highlighted them a little bit. I'm going to get a little more white into my yellow. And make sure that some of these also just one dimension. All right. Feel like this is quite a lot. We're going to want to dry this, and I'll show you what's going on in the next step. A lot of steps in this, I know, but it's like every step we get a layer of flowers, and pretty soon we'll have this garden, and you're going to see it in the thumbnail and think, how am I going to paint that? Yeah. And then I'm going to be like, I'm going to show you how you're going to paint that. And you're going to be like, I'm not going to paint that. And I'm like, yes, you are going to paint it. And you're like, I don't think so. I'm going to be like, use the mini book. And you're going to use the mini book, and then you're going to go, oh, this is how I keep from getting lost in the video. And then you're going to paint along with me, and you're going to be like, I can paint anything. Because I believe in you. You can do this. Yeah. But first we have to dry it so I can continue to believe in you, and we can continue painting together. Are you good, ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So we are trucking along in the most amazing way. I'm pretty proud of us. We need to put in some stems, and I think I'm going to use my 3/4 inch angle to do it. I need to create a stem that is going to kind of come here, and then a few here, and then one here, and that's going to set up another type of spike flower.
Oh.
So I'm going to get a little of my yellow into my green, get a little brown into it so it's not too saturated. I'm going to get a little white into it so we can see it. I'm going to come here and I feel like that's too thick. That is too thick. All right. I don't like that line. Watch what I do here at all. I don't like it. It's wet. It's gone.
Zoo.
I can change brushes. Happens to me. Happens to you. Happens to everybody.
Change the plan.
We change the plan. If the plan doesn't work, change the plan.
Which brush is that?
This is my number 4 liner from the Catalyst line. Short-handled.
Extra small, round,
yeah.
synthetic.
And I just have to make sure these lines are a little finer than what I had there. Usually an angle brush gives you a sharper edge. That just wasn't very sharp. You know? So what are you going to do? Change the brush. I'm going to come here and get a little of my green and yellow. Like you do. I'm going to shade one side. Looks like the left side is what I'm shading there, but I might shade the right side here. Because it's where they're bending if we're matching the light coming down. I'm just giving some dimensionality to my stems a little bit so that they show. And then I'm going to get a little of my green and yellow and brown together again. As you do. As I do. Got a little yellow on my red on my brush that I'm going to take out. Okay. Now I'm going to come to the top here. I'll pull down kind of little bulbs, little balls. Top of these have like a bit of these going on. I might even get a little of my white and yellow into it just so that it's just more vibrant. Better. Just doing the tops of these. Kind of rinse them out, rinse this out. I'm not even going to change brushes because I feel like if I change brushes right now, I'm going to end up being like super disappointed in my experience. Now I'm going to come much more into the red with this magenta and red, my cad red. So stronger in the red. And I'm going to sort of tip some of these little ball tips that I had. So you can see them coming in. This will be a very strong line of color that we're trying to. Well, and you can see as I come down, the flowers start to open. See how they start to open? Now I'm going to stop here just because I feel like this is a lot to write up in a step. And then we're going to come back and do the bigger flowers coming down.
That makes sense.
Okay. I'm going to continue down with my number 4 round from Simply Simmons, same color set. I won't highlight initially at first. Right now I want to get in the basic flowers and their little sort of stems going on. So, I'm going to come here and I'm going to do a little comma that sort of arcs up, out, and down, and then in, like a little trumpet.
Yeah.
Like a little trumpet.
Oh.
Sometimes they just come in, but oftentimes they're just like nice big trumpets. Now I want to layer these correctly, so I will come over here, and this will have some trumpets this way. Perhaps one in the center, and one coming off. And it's really about this color being here. That's what we're really trying to kind of capture. And I will take this down a bit because I know I'm going to want this to peek in through the greenery. Aren't I?
Yeah.
It's going to look gorgeous peeking in. I know there's going to be some people who are like, you mentioned a bigger painting version of this. When will that be out?
Huh.
Painting the trumpet. And these just build all the way down.
Yeah.
I try to change the position of where they're coming from, and I try to hide maybe a little color here and there so that they have continuity. Again, sometimes I'm taking them all the way down just so that when the grass blades come up, we can see things. I'll even put them into the flowers where I know I'm going to have grass blades, where I know what's going to be going on. Magenta over to the red, more to the red than the magenta. We're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching it. Very good.
You're just pulling those little trumpets into the flower. One kind of facing more towards us. It's fun to put them all the places that they could go. Sometimes we don't paint things because they seem complicated in their structure.
Yep.
But really it's just, yes, there's more steps, but it's just broken down steps.
Yeah, there's just lots of steps.
Just lots of steps. Not necessarily.
Bad steps, just lots of them.
Mm-hmm. Or
Art, art.
impossible for beginner or any of that. Just involved.
Yep.
You might not naturally know where it comes from. And I kind of let them fall down as they would have more weight. A little thing we would do. Going up here. Okay, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Pretty awesome. Kind of like it.
That's nice.
All right, now we're going to take our number 4 catalyst liner again. We're going to add a little yellow and red together. Oh, we had some down here, I remember. We moved some a couple of places. So it's a little red in it, but it's still yellow. And I'm going to come in these and add a little bell.
Oh,
We might paint over some of the bells, but I just like to get them in at first.
yep.
I think this is going to be some people's favorite painting. If this was your favorite painting of Acrylic April, let me know. Because it's always interesting. Like sometimes it'll be the abstract or it'll be the mouse that, well, it was a hamster that I kept calling a mouse.
Huh.
I realized later, I'm like, oh, I totally did paint a hamster, didn't I? Well, he's on that flower now. So that's what's happening. This looks pretty good.
It looks really good.
I can come in and take some green. I think I'll probably do that at the end because I want to put some forward facing. I want to kind of create the scope of the bell.
Yep.
Dry this, come back, I'm going to show you what you do next. So I was just like telling John how proud I am of this, and I
It
wish
is
this was
super
like
good.
my first painting on YouTube. I wish it was. Go back in time and do that. All right, this I'm going to get a little more of my red in there, and it's okay if some of the yellow gets into it. I'll put just a smidge of the Quin, but it's really about this being much more red. And I'm going to come here and add that brighter bell, leaving that darker one, and it kind of creates a open flower. You guys see how it does?
Yeah.
So that's how we're going to create these little open flowers that have little bells on them. Same brush stroke as before, you just kind of pull it in. finish out the bells.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I get a little yellow into it, I can. Sometimes it's nice to lighten red with a little bit of yellow. I'm just putting little highlights here and there. Creating varietals in the flowers. Sometimes just more in red. I think it's interesting how when you're painting flowers that it's about color and form and shape and value, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
And then once you start to understand, oh well, this is a bull flower, this is a star flower, this is a trumpet flower. These are a spiral. It's like you'll
I have
start to
no idea what
you
any of them are.
you see how nature will sometimes repeat itself, and then once you see it, you don't unsee it. It can take a minute to see it, and that's why people are like, "I'm not good at painting flowers," is because they know they have a visual catalog that they have worked on their whole lives of flowers and gardens and places that they've been and flowers that they've liked. And so they're sure what they want it to be. And when it's not that, they are hyper aware of it. You know, oh, look at that. Those just look super lovely. Look at them. Oh man, I really like those. I'm going to call that good, and let's dry that, and we'll come back and put in a little foliage to kind of work them in. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Okay. To get the front last bit of flowers, I feel like we need to do some greenery filling in, and I didn't want it to blend into the red. So I'm going to come here and get a little of my phthalo green and a little cad yellow, and I'm letting it get into a bit of titanium white. And I'm going to try to create some nice little. No, I think I got to pull down. I'm going to have to touch pull. I'm better at that leaf stroke. Just want to create some leaves that are here in these flowers. And I will get a lot more yellow and a lot more white involved. Maybe sometimes touch those to see if I wanted to like connect them with a little greenery, but I don't think it will be particularly additive.
Mm.
And I'm going to grab a little bit. I'm going to grab my number one, not my number one, my number four. And again, my yellow and black for another green. This time with a little bit of white into it, just to lighten it. Just to do some little upward grasses. I'm trying to kind of weave these in places. So that the type of depth I'm looking for would be there, and then I'll go ahead and take my yellow and my black again and create a pretty deep green. make sure this lower bit is a bit more depthy. I'm using my 3/4 inch angle to do it, but it wouldn't be important. I'm trying not to paint out my flowers. I just want to make sure it's depthy down there. Because I'm going to put a whole bunch of stuff in front of this, and I'm going to need fresh water for this last bit, and you probably will too. Dry your canvas, get fresh water, and come back. We're going to start the last row of flowers. Can you believe we're at a last
I
row of
know.
flowers? And this painting, it's fantastic. All right, let's get to the last row of flowers. So I'm going to put some fresh yellow out just because I want some soft, fresh yellow. I feel like my yellow's a little bit dirty. I don't need that much. But these are pretty bright yellow flowers in the front. They kind of tie into these back here. And this repeat will really create a sense of continuity in the garden. I've got fresh, clean water so that everything I'm painting looks pretty good. And I think I'm going to start with some greenery and little bits of shapes and then come in and layer in some flowers and then some more greenery is the sort of plan.
Yep.
Do you like the sort of plan?
I like that sort of plan.
So again, my favorite, I'm going to take a little bit of my phthalo green and burnt sienna, and I'm going to add a good amount of yellow to it. Keep adding some burnt sienna into it. I want it kind of like a not bright key green.
Oh.
More yellow. I'm going to roll that out. These little leaf shapes are curved. They're a little bit wider. Let's bring them off the canvas too. And do bring them up into what's above them. So they have a bit of, layering into it.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot more yellow in it. A lot more yellow. And I'm going to kind of put these are like, oh gosh, these are the little bulbs of things that haven't quite bloomed yet.
The beginnings.
They're the beginnings. The not yets. It's good to have them in there because they sort of fill in, space. And again, they promise a future, which I think is important. So yes, little yellow bows. Back to the number 4. Good idea to have some stems. Perhaps really thought out. And then maybe some that are sort of applied. I'm adding some white to it, my fluid white. And some yellow. Just going to brighten it. These likely won't be the last of the stems. And then I'm going to take a little of this and make sure that I'm going to highlight these a little bit. It's just a little extra touch.
Little touches here and there make it nice.
Just to show some consideration. They're in there. They're doing something we don't know. They're going to do different things. I'm going to dry it. We're going to come back and add some blooms. So we need to put some yellow flowers here. I'm going to grab my brush, my number 4 round, and I'm going to put in some superstars right off the bat. These are they're a yellow with a little bit of red. I'll need to avoid the black if I'm going to keep that going. Trying to find my little spot here. Sometimes you have to find your spot. All right. Now I'm going to put one here. This one, doing little curved strokes. Not too dissimilar from the daisies. If your yellow isn't covering, remember what we said at the beginning. You're going to paint it white first, dry it, and then go over it. This one is sort of a face awayer. So I'm trying to make sure that, as we go, it's got that sort of face away. And then we've got another face awayer here. This one is maybe in the distance and a little bit flat. I feel like I'm narrating an episode of Friends. The one with the flat face. That doesn't get that. You didn't really watch Friends?
Ooh, me?
No, not at all. I did. I
I
did.
might be able to know.
I mean, he heard a lot
One
about Ross and
friend.
Rachel, and they were on a
Okay.
break, and where he landed on that,
See,
but
I
he didn't
was that.
actually watch the show.
No, I would have. The only character I. Yeah, no. I didn't remember any names.
Little touch there, right? Just making little bowls. Sometimes the petals are kind of short because they're close to me, and sometimes they're, long because they're facing away. And I will sometimes hide little bits of these in between, tuck them in between flowers or stems,
Yeah.
As you do. Now I'm going to have one that's really right here. Sometimes in a garden, you will have stuff and it kind of faces the same direction. You may wonder how that happens. The plants track the sunlight, so their faces tend to follow the sunlight.
Oh yeah.
You can find little time lapse videos on, I'm sure, Facebook, but also YouTube, all about that. Look at us go.
Well, you go. I'm watching.
Well, I mean, you're taking the journey with me. And here's what I like to do: take the place I would totally normally sign my signature and put an object in it. Because why wouldn't I mess with myself that way? Why wouldn't I? Might come back with just a little red. All right. I feel like that's good. Guess what I'm going to say right now?
What's that?
Dry. So we've got to put some centers and some detailing on here. This one we know is facing away, but some of these are open, and where they're open, I'm going to want to come in and get a little of my magenta and my red. We kind of did that earlier, didn't we? And I'm going to say, where have I got an open one? I've got an open one here. I'm going to make sure that in the middle, where the face is going to be, add that little bit of red. If I'm only going to see half of it, I would just kind of think about where the flower's facing. This one is maybe not going to be on those far petals.
Yeah.
Because the button would cover it, but other areas you would see all of it.
Oh, that makes sense.
Kind of beginning with that in the center. But again, not all of them would be, like that. Then I'm going to come here and get a little of my yellow and perchance some of my white. Perchance. And kind of layering up these flowers. Not every bit of it, but Now some of these we really are going to get into. That one's a little further away, so we closed it up with little short brush strokes. And we're just on the edges here. One's facing up, so maybe we don't see inside its pretty little face. Just here. Aren't they bright and cheerful now?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, it's too many flowers. Been here too long. Too much has gone on. I can't remember where I live now. I'm going to take a little bit of my orange and yellow, make kind of a little orange button. It will end up being much lighter than this. This is just where we're starting. I'm trying to get it into just on the toe of my brush so that I can control the center. And I think I'm going to move down into my liner brush so I have a little more control of things. Shall we do that? I think we're going to grab a little bit of our yellow with black. And we're going to get some white into that. More white into that on our liner. I want it even lighter than that. I need contrast. There we go. We got to see those faces, right?
Yeah.
And I'm punching up those faces. I like it. I like it. Come back with a little black and green and black and yellow for the green. Just trying to get a little shading on that.
Yeah. I can see it.
So the reason that we're paying attention to the buttons and everything here so much, that we're putting this extra time into it, I'm going to get some of my green that I was using everywhere. And make that a face away flower, and perhaps this a face away flower. See, just by the very act of, when you do the back of them like that, they definitely become face away flowers. I'm going to get into my white. I do want some yellow in it. And kind of really edge out some of these. Add a little more yellow. I do want it to be bright. I don't want to take the yellow out of the yellow. Okay. Super good, super good, super good. We are almost there, guys. Yes, hold on. It's almost coffee time, John.
Almost coffee time.
You can make it. Okay, there we go. Just capturing a little bit of these faces. They're close. The details won't, hurt us. It will only pull it out into and I can kind of capture the edges of those petals and face them towards me. Look at us go.
Looking pretty good.
I am really okay with it. I can come in here with the liner and make some more distinctive petals, right? Like right here, this one needs some more distinctive petals to face away, and then it's facing away. These forward detailed flowers. They aren't really that detailed. It's so strange. They are getting our attention, but we're not tightening up.
This is really cool.
It's just joyful in every way. I feel. That's my feeling
I think
on
so.
it.
Very.
You just go and go and go. All right, guys. We get to sign it.
Wow. That
Yeah.
turned out so nice.
It did, didn't it? It just really, really, really did. Really, 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 really did.
Really, really.
Trying to find a good signing color. A messy palette for me today. And I'm usually not, but today was. Trying to get it on the tip there so I can get a nice line. Oh my gosh. Did we paint the most flowers? I could have made this the end of the whole thing. I can't even imagine trying to edit that time lapse while I have it kind of like mildly crooked the whole way through. I hope you guys are enjoying the 1 minute short videos. I really appreciate the support for those because I do think they're a good way for you to get a peek or know what's coming up or kind of have an idea if you need to just refresh what's going on in a project to kind of see that and know. And plus, I think it's going to be a great place for me to maybe give a micro tip,
Micro.
an amuse bouche of art information. So, um, those will be on Instagram and TikTok and now YouTube. And that really was you guys saying, hey, if you didn't want to get a TikTok, now it's going to be on YouTube as well. So how cool is that?
Yeah.
So you just be where you want to be. Pinterest, just be where you want to be.
Be where you want to be.
You be where you want to be, and I'll make sure things are where you like them.
And I think
just
we'll
put
be
them
right.
everywhere.
We'll be right back, right?
Yeah, come back and I'll tell you what you're going to do next. So, as a final thought before I leave you, one of the things that has come up during Acrylic April is frustration around getting a traceable, or maybe you wanted to use a grid, or there was a different way that you really wanted to do this. And what I would like to suggest to everybody is that there is always a way. And I'm happy to share free resources or programs that I have. You can use Grid Tutor and grid anything. Anything. If you like the gridding method to understand how to lay things out or change sizes, that resource is there to you all the time. On your printer, there are ways to change the size of the print, things like scale to fit, the percentage of scale. There's also editing software, so you can edit it before you get it to your printer, things like Pixelmulator, and there's a lot of free stuff out there. There are programs that project images. There's just a way. Don't let some small technological obstacle, and I know sometimes technological obstacles feel big, but the cool thing about Google is, and I'm going to sound like Gen X here, but you can know everything if you feel like it.
Yep.
So if you have a printer, you can put in that printer's name and the model number and search scale to fit, and instructions on how to find that feature are there.
It's true.
It's true. If you're having problems downloading something, you can be like, can't download PDFs on Google. And maybe it'll tell you, oh, you haven't updated the patch. There is an answer. And honestly, it's just a search away. And these systems have become so intuitive lately that honestly, you just put in your experience and it comes back to you, right? Like I was trying to remember the name of a show and I'm like, sci-fi Western on Prime, and it knew immediately. I mean, it was like such the weirdest search, and it was like, yeah, I know what you want. So that ad tracking thing that we all don't like actually does have a nice feature in understanding what it is we're looking for, and I never mind sharing, a technological resource or a free resource. I am here to help you. The team is here to help you. So don't wait on the journey because of something small like that. That is my what to do next thought. As you go forward. Never let anything stop you. You have done, I don't know you've done 10 harder things than this in your life. I know that's true.
Sure.
And I don't know you. So you have it in you to face any of these challenges. Art challenges, printing challenges, Acrylic April challenges. You are absolutely more than enough. And I think you will always be able to surprise yourself. So I just want you to know I believe in you and I am here to support that. We're going to be back again for another floral painting. I really hope you'll join us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button and leave a comment. Tell me if this was your favorite or which, Acrylic April painting was your favorite. I really can't wait to find that out. There's nothing else to do but for you guys to, and what's coming next, be good to yourself, be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.